What kind of support, what amount and kind of support do you need in your life right now? Well, that's just the kind of question that means you are listening to Poetry, Gossip, and the Pursuit of Pleasure with Dale Byron, your host. That's me. This is a place where we look at poetry, we unpack poetry in a very, very practical way. As we always say each week, it's a podcast where we explore the creative and practical ways poetry can help us in our everyday lives, finding little pockets of joy, sanity, and connectedness. Okay. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Um, I was thinking the title that question infers of what kind and what quality support do you need in your life right now. Our title is going to be the kind of support you need, just the kind of support you need. And of course, we're going to be working with some poetry and some stories to get to that question and that title. Um, the note I made for myself is each of us needs to feel an unwavering amount of support in this world. Support that helps us navigate the world, support that helps us see the world more clearly, learn what we need to learn, and particularly helping us when we're in trouble, when we are in peril. So we're going to get started right off the bat with a poem by one of my favorite poets, William Stafford. And this is a poem that he wrote for and about his 7-year-old daughter, or at the time when she was 7 years old. And the poem is called With Kit, age 7, at the Beach. You can imagine that this is one of those wild beaches on the Oregon coast. William Stafford lived in Lake Oswego and taught there in Oregon for many years at Lewis and Clark University. And so that's where the setting of this poem is, just to give you a little more context. With Kit, age 7, at the beach. And remember what we're listening for. What kind of support do you need in this world? What kind of support do you need? Okay. We would climb the highest dune. We would climb the highest dune, from there to gaze and come down. The ocean, the ocean was performing. We contributed our climb. We would climb the highest dune, from there to gaze and come down. The ocean was performing. We contributed our climb. Waves leapfrogged and came straight out of the storm. What should our gaze mean? Kit waited for me to decide. Standing on such a hill, what would you tell your child? Standing on such a hill, what would you tell your child? That was an absolute vista. Those waves raced far and cold. How far could you swim, Daddy, in such a storm? As far as was needed, I said. And as I talked, I swam. There's a kind of both understated but incredibly powerful support which that poem talks about. I think the kind of support that we all need. I hope the kind of support that each of you listening experienced at least at some point in your life, and hopefully in your younger life, when you were the age of William Stafford's child, his daughter, Kit. And so this brief poem has so much in it, the images and the sounds. Let's listen to this again. Let's enjoy it again. With Kit, age 7, at the beach. We would climb the highest dune. We would climb the highest dune. From there to gaze and come down. The ocean was performing. We contributed our climb. You see how there's a kind of unity there that the protagonist in the poem, in this case, William Stafford, with his daughter, his 7-year-old daughter, but there's a kind of unity. The ocean was performing and we contributed our climb. Everything was connected, everything was integrated. The next stanza: waves leapfrogged and came straight out of the storm. What should our gaze mean? Kit waited for me to decide. What should our gaze mean? It's a wonderful, delicious question. Have you ever thought about that? What should your gaze mean? What does it mean to what you're gazing at? What does it mean to others that you are with at the time? What should our gaze mean? Kit waited for me to decide. Remember, this is one of those wild storms on the Oregon coast. It's just you just begin to get that crashing waves and the feeling of that whole situation, that whole context, that whole gestalt. The third stanza: standing on such a hill, standing on such a hill. And I remember they had climbed the highest dune, standing on such a hill. What would you tell your child? There we are. We are brought directly into the poem. I talk about how a poem invites us to walk inside. Here, the protagonist in the poem is inviting us, what would you tell your child? So there we are. What would we tell our child? That was an absolute vista. Those waves raced far and cold. The last stanza: how far could you swim, Daddy, in such a storm? How far could you swim, Daddy, in such a storm? As far as was needed, I said. As far as was needed, I said. And as I talked, I swam. One of the most amazing metaphors that I've run into, and I've run into many, but as I talked, I swam. That's the support. That's the how far, how much support? As much as was needed, as much as is needed. Unwavering support. The note I made here says each of us needs a solid, unwavering support in this world. I really believe that. We need it first and maybe foremost from ourselves. We need that support. How far could we swim for ourselves? As far as was needed. We need to be able to say that support, unwavering support for ourselves, and unwavering support from others, and particularly from the natural world that we often call Mother Earth. That's become more and more important in my own life. Where is that support? We're standing on solid ground. Where is that support? There it is. There it is. Clouds, the earth, the trees. Okay, let's keep cooking. I've not done very many Robert Frost poems on this podcast, but we're going to do one in this episode talking about support. What kind of support do you need? How much support does any human being need from themselves, from others, and from the great other, as we say, or the natural world, or Mother Earth? This poem is by Robert Frost. It's called A Time to Talk. A Time to Talk. When a friend calls to me, when a friend calls to me from the road, when a friend calls to me from the road and slows his horse to a meaning walk, I don't stand still and look around on all the hills I haven't hoed. Are you getting the scene? Here's a man standing in his garden, standing in a field. He's hoeing, he's working, He's working the land, and a friend comes by and slows his horse to a meaning walk. So we get the signal is this person wants to talk. There's something important, something that has meaning that this person wants to talk about. So as the poet says again, when a friend calls to me from the road and slows his horse to a meaning walk, I don't stand still and look around on all the hills I haven't hoed and shout from where I am, what is it? What is it? I don't do that. What is it? I don't just stand there and shout that. No, no, not as there is a time to talk. Not as there is a time to talk. I thrust my hoe in the mellow ground, blade end up and 5 feet tall. You can get that image. It says, I'm stopping my work for this friend that needs me. I thrust my hoe in the mellow ground, blade end up 5 feet tall, and plod. I go up to the stone wall for a friendly visit. For a friendly visit. I was thinking as I was reading that poem, do I stop for others? Do I stop for friends that really need me and listen to them? Stop what I'm doing, stop my work, stop my busyness. Do we stop for others? Do you? Do you stop for yourself? When you need support, when you need attention, when you need some care, do you do that for yourself? And when have any of us stopped for Mother Earth and all its trees, mountains, rivers, and sentient beings, its creatures? All need support. Okay. Now, you know, as I like to always say, we are heading for the barn. This is going to be an episode where we're going to have 3 poems because I wanted to have 3, I hope you will agree with me, 3 powerful poems about support for ourselves, for others, from others, I'm sorry, support for ourselves, support from others, and support that we need from our Mother Earth. And of course, all those are reciprocal things. All that support goes both ways, of course. But we're talking about specifically the support that you need, that I need, that we need from ourselves and each other and Mother Earth. Okay, this final poem is from a poet, Naomi Shihab Nye, who she's such a delight. I've had some connections with her, used one of her poems in a prose book that I wrote on leadership and poetry. And every interaction I've had with her has just been delightful. She's just not only a brilliant poet, but just a down to earth, solid, big hearted, bright human being. Yeah, Naomi Shihab Nye. This poem is called Shoulders. And, you know, I did not know about this poem until I was doing the research. I know a lot of her poems, but I did not know about this one. It's such a delight. At least that's my feeling. You decide. I suspect you'll like it. A man crosses the street in rain. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south, because his son is asleep on his shoulder. Get that image? A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south, because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him. No car drive too near his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked Nowhere does his jacket say fragile, handle with care. His ears fills up, his ear fills up with breathing. The child is here. His ear fills up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. What I love about that poem is it not only uses amazing imagery and very straightforward, um, images and sounds and language, all that pulls right at the heart. I think this is such a delicious poem, and you see not only the importance of this kind of support. And again, this is another situation. The first poem is about a father and a daughter. This is about a father and a son. But that kind of support is like a metaphor for all support, for the support for ourselves, for the support for others, and for the support, as we're saying, also for Mother Earth, the natural world. And what I love about this one is that it's really talking about what's at stake. I love that. So he says, his ear fills up with breathing. You get that image. You just, the whole thing, you just see that, don't you? You just see this dad with his son on his shoulder, and the dad's ear fills with breathing. His ear fills with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. There's a lot at stake here. We're not going to be able to live. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. So now we go from the particular to the universal. We are not going to be able to live on this planet unless we can support each other in this way. And as I've been saying, that stems initially and most foundationally and importantly for us having the ability to support ourselves in that way so that we can give that kind of support, so that we can give that kind of caring and even loving, of course, and particularly loving in this case. And if we don't do that, the protagonist, the poet, says, the road will only be wide. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. Have you noticed that in the most amazing poems, the most artful poems, that often the images, which are on one level subtle, but on another level, those images sink right down to the depths of our heart. And we get what it means if the road is only wide and we're stuck, you know, in the middle of that road. And we get what it's like if the rain never stops falling. We get that image and that feeling deep inside. One reader said of this poem, the visual imagery is so precise and simple at the same time, profound. The visual imagery is so precise and simple, and at the same time, profound. That's the way that quote should be read. What would this world be like? My question, what would this world be like if we treated ourselves and each other and Mother Earth with the kind of concern that is so well communicated in this brilliant poem by Naomi Shihab Nye. Okay, that's a wrap. That is a wrap. And if you've learned something or felt something in this episode, I always say I would love it if you'd recommend the podcast to someone else. Make a comment, depending on where you are listening to this, YouTube or one of the other podcast channels. Make a comment, all that good stuff. And as I always say, until next time and next poems, please take good care of yourself.